I have entitled my latest video, Here Speaks Common Sense. No, before you think I'm getting too big-headed, I'm not referring to myself at all. I'm talking about and quoting from an eminent professor in oncology, Carol Sikora, who lives in Beaconsfield, Buckinghamshire, near my old stomping ground in fact, and who seems to me to speak a lot of sense. I first heard Professor Sikora speak on the early morning BBC News a few weeks back while I was still coming to, and probably only took in about half of what he said. Nothing unusual there, I can hear Margaret say. But even that half was enough to whet my appetite and sit up and take note. And then to see the same professor write in our daily paper on June the 3rd, well, it isn't often I pull out and keep a newspaper article, but this one I did. And here are just a few of the highlights, given in no particular order. The professor is talking good and common sense as he shares with us the following. 1. The chance of getting infected by COVID-19 has plummeted to around 1 in 1,000 compared to 1 in 40 at the peak of the curve. 2. In most parts of the world, the pandemic is showing signs of petering out. Indeed, many countries are now virus-free. 3. When this is all over, we must do our best not to emerge into a new normal, but an old normal, as we seize back our former lives. And lastly, this. We make judgments all the time in doing what we think is best for ourselves and for others. And the professor quotes an example. He says, "My wife once made a parachute jump. I never have, and I never would. Our respective decisions are based on how scared we are at the thought of jumping out of an aeroplane and on our rational assessment of the risks involved. And so it is with COVID-19. We may or we may not agree with all that the professor says. Indeed, some of his own colleagues call him too optimistic, and he himself admits that his glass is always half full rather than half empty. But which is better? To have the courage to look on the bright side of life, or let ourselves continue to be dragged down in fear of what might or might not happen? Please don't get me wrong. I realize as well as anyone that a second wave of the virus, for some, remains a probability rather than a possibility and could be disastrous. Many believe it would sweep in and out faster than the first one, but in a very much fiercer and destructive way. Maybe, maybe not. We look at the crowds and crowds of people who gathered all over the world just recently in empathy and solidarity with those struggling after the horrific murder of George Floyd in America. And we understand the anger and the frustration and the turmoil in all our minds as we try to find ways of expressing our feelings. But in today's climate, is crowding together with barely an inch between us rather than observing the 2 meters of distancing, or better still, stay at home, a sensible and well thought out way of going about things? Hardly. So, there is reason to be careful, and it is understandable that many are fearful. However, coming back to Professor Sikora's 4th point about his wife and her parachute jump, there's also a need and a reason for being positive and to allow our personal choices, even the risky ones at times. Mind you, personally, I can think of few things worse than a parachute jump. Yet, my Margaret might well disagree. I can see her doing it. We can either sit down and give up and believe that nothing is ever going to get better, or we can summon up the courage to believe that actually, yes, it will get better. Jesus had something to say about not to worry, and here it is from Matthew chapter 6, verses 33 and 34. Seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and everything will be given to you. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And to that I would just like to add the following: as well as joy and hope and love in plenty too, lest we forget. God bless you.